All right, now, good morning, everyone. We're learning a new mimer here in Torah Or, and the mimer is about a very strange sentence right before the Jews sing their song, right? The Jews went over Yam Suf, they went over the sea, and all the Egyptians drowned. The Egyptians were hot in pursuit, and as soon as the last Jew got out of the sea, so the Egyptians had not yet caught up to them. So before the after the last Jew got out, and before the first Egyptian got out, so the sea closed in on them and drowned all the Egyptians, and then it washed them all up, washed up all the riches that the Egyptians had taken because they thought they were going to be victorious and they were going to make a big party. So they took along all of their jewelry and their bling blings and their studded diamond studded shoes or whatever they had, and that all washed up on the shore. And it says that there was more riches on the shore than the Jews took out of Egypt. I don't know how they missed it when they left Egypt, but they missed because I thought they took everything out. But in any case, somehow or other, there was a lot of riches left in Egypt. The soldiers had it. I guess maybe they didn't go into the soldiers' camps. They just went into people's houses when they left Egypt. In any case, now what happened is Vayar Yisrael, the Jewish people saw. Vayar Yisrael, the Jewish people saw. 1 minute, that's not what I wanted. Here we go. The Jewish people, they saw Hayad Gadol, the great hand of God, Asher Asa Hashem, that God did in Mitzrayim, Vayiru Ha'am, and the people saw God, Vayaminu, and they believed in God, Uba Moshe Avdo. They saw God and they believed in God, and Moses, his servant. Okay, so, at first glance, nice, a biblical sentence, the Bible can say whatever it wants to, God can say anything he wants to. But the purpose of the Torah is to teach us something. So technically, we can ask a question, and we should ask a question. We should be, our curiosity should be aroused by every word, every letter that's in the Torah. What type of answers you come to, that's determined by what type of person you are. Right? The questions are good, but all sorts of dishonest or ingenious people, anyway, made up all sorts of bad answers. But if you have true rabbis, then they come up with true answers. But the Torah is there that you should ask questions about, because the whole purpose of the Torah is to teach us every word, every idea. And not everything can we understand. There's Kabbalistic secrets that only great Kabbalists can understand. And then there's, people can just make up anything they want to. In fact, once there's the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, his mother passed away. So he sat Shiva with 7 days of mourning. And he was a recognized, tremendous Talmud scholar. So other Talmud scholars came and they to visit him and to pay their respects, to comfort. It's called comforting the mourner. Nicham Avelim. And they would come, they would talk to him. So someone said that these people come to you and they say words of Torah, and that's forbidden to learn Torah. On Aval is forbidden to learn Torah, but the people that came to visit him were always occupied in Torah, so they would say Torah ideas. So somebody asked the Rebbe, how is it permissible? You should tell them not to say words of Torah. So the Rebbe said, a mourner is supposed to be in suffering, is supposed to mourn. So the Rebbe said, when I hear the ideas that they say, a lot of them are so off, the point that makes me suffer. That's my suffering. So you can have also, it's a good idea to have ideas in the Torah, but they have to be accurate ones. You got a whole big religion based on people that totally misinterpret the Torah on purpose or by accident, who knows what. But the whole Christianity is based on just misinterpretations, one after the other, of the Torah. But they're convincing. It sounds good. Okay, here, let's have a genuine Let's ask a genuine question and get a genuine answer. It says that the Jewish people went across the sea and that the people saw God and they believed in God and in Moses, his servant. Okay, if they saw God, what do they have to believe in? Right? If I show you that I have $1,000 in the bank, you don't have to believe that I have $1,000 in the bank. Maybe you can believe I didn't trick you or something. But here they saw God. It wasn't a trick. They felt their creator. Can't fool a person about a thing like that. They felt God, they saw God, and they believed in God. That's the question that's going to be over here. What does it mean if they saw God? Why do they have to believe? To understand, why does it begin this thing of seeing God before believing in God? Usually it's the other way around, right? I believe you have money. I believe God exists. And then after that, because of my belief, because of my this, so therefore I am privy to see the money, right? You believe I have the money? Well, I'm going to show it to you. Right? I believe the person has money. Therefore, I go with him into a business. Then I act. But here it says, no, here it says that they, first of all, they acted first, they saw God, and then they believed in him. What does this mean? Why is belief even necessary? Because if it says, what's this got to do with us? That's the point. What's it coming to teach me and you? Right now, the biggest misconception in the world is what is God? That's the biggest misconception. There's no bigger misconception. There's no topic which is more pressing and necessary than what is God. That's the most important topic in existence. What is God? Of course, a person that doesn't believe in God, so he thinks it's not important at all, or he thinks there is no such thing as God. So he thinks that's not important at all. But that doesn't in any way minimize the fact that it is the most important. People just don't want to put their attention to it. But the fact is, the most important topic of all is there God or not? Why? Because if we say if there is God, it means that we're being created, and every moment of our existence is depending on our creator, and we're being created for a purpose. We're not just a product of energy and oxidation, or whatever you want to call it. We're not just this, how do you say, ambivalent things just floating around. That happens to be we have intelligence, whatever. You can certainly think that way, but it's not so. But if it is so that's very important. So why are we being created? What is the creator doing? Why does he want us to be here? What's our point? What exactly is our responsibility? What am I supposed to do with my arms, my legs, these are all creations of God. Maybe I owe God a little, at least to listen to him. But does God exist or not? And he does exist. So what is God? Okay, so it says, let's go. So the Jewish people, when they went across the sea, they saw God. So why do they have to believe in God afterwards? Because it says, Vayikra Hashem Hashem, 2 times. After the Jewish people sinned with the golden calf, so Moses said, please God, forgive the Jewish people. And God said, okay, I'll forgive them. So then Moses said, but listen, I know these people, they're going to do it again. Give me some way to pray to you. Something to direct my prayers and that at least have a chance of it working, because they're going to sin again. So the God said, okay, I'll take you up on Mount Sinai and I'm going to show you how to pray. And then he said, this is the prayer you're going to use. Hashem, Hashem, Kel Rachum. It's called the 13 attributes of mercy. Before the 13 attributes of mercy begin, the first of the 13 attributes of mercy is Kel. Aleph Lamed. That's the first. But before that, it says Hashem, Hashem, 2 times the name God. Hashem, why 2 times the name God? God, say God 1 time. What do you mean, God, God? That's how you call it, God, God. Why? Kihine, behold, base, bechinas, shemos. There's 2 types. There's 2 types of godliness that these 2 names go on. Echad, one of them is Shem Havaya. One of them is the name Yud Kei Vav Kei. Dilatata, from below. Same name. It means two different things. One of them is, now this name Havaya is really the four letters Yud and then Hey and then Vav and then Hey. We don't say it. You're not supposed to say the name of God. So we don't, even in our prayers, we don't say Yud and then Hey, Vav, Hey. We say Aleph, Daled, Nun, Yud, Al Adonai, which we also don't say. But when you're praying, we do say it. But this name of God, you, we don't say that at all. At all. Even in prayer, we don't say it. So there's two names of God, Yud and then Hey and then Vav, Hey. Two names. One of them is what's called Havaya, God below. Hamahava Kol that creates all of the worlds from something to nothing. That's the lower name of God. Remember, we just talked about that. That's like the letters of God that creates all the spiritual levels. That's the lower name of God. Lahavin, to understand that that's the lower name of God, creates everything as the creator. He creates everything from nothing to something. Let's understand, what does it mean that God creates everything from nothing to something? Halo Kativ is not written, Ki Mimcha Hakol, that everything comes from you. Everything is created something from nothing. What, God is nothing? Everything comes from nothing. What is nothing? What do you mean everything comes from nothing? Everything comes from God. How can you call God nothing? Yesh mi'ayin, something from nothing. But because God's, it's even in English, I think they have what's called, it's a Latin term, ex nihilo. Everything is created from nothing. So if it's created from nothing, then how did it become something? What does it mean? It's not, it's created from God. God creates everything, so to speak, from himself or from his word or from something, right? But it's something from a bigger thing. What do you mean something from no thing? What does that mean? So that's the lowest aspect of God, that he creates everything from nothing. But what does it mean something, everything from nothing? Now we're going to understand this lowest name of Yud Kei Vav Kei. Because God's essence, Ein Lo Sheichus, is no connection to the worlds at all. There's no possible thing you can compare to God. And therefore, Bilti Efshar, it's impossible almost for the worlds, the Kabel Chayusim, to receive their life, Behitavusam, and their existence. Let me make this bigger. Here we go. Let me try to make this bigger another way. No, it doesn't work. 1 second. 1 minute. I'm not giving. Therefore, it is not. What happened? What did I do here? Therefore, it is not possible to receive their life, but by means of the name of God. That God has to, so to speak, contract, conceal. Tzimtzum, it's called tzimtzum, means to contract. Shu b'chinas Yud, that's the first letter of God's name, letter Yud. And then afterwards, God articulates this light, or his, that's in the Bible, it's called God's speech. God spoke. So first of all, there is the preparation. That's the letter Yud. And then it spreads out. That's called the letter Hey. And then afterwards, it can be drawn down. God's creative power can be drawn down. These are all levels of how God dims down his light. That's the second name of God. Yud is makes it very small little point. From this little point, it expands, and he expands the point. And then this expansion, God brings it down. And by means of this, it says, Hu tziva v'nivra'u. It says that God commanded and the worlds were created. Not that he creates them, but the worlds are being created. What does it mean? The worlds are being created. God doesn't create the world. It says, yes, but God creates the world through this process by which you cannot see or feel God. God conceals himself, hides, veils, contractions. So it seems that the world is being created automatically. This refers to on the name of Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is written above. Yahalalu et Shem Hashem. That's what it means, that God's name should be praised. The name of God, the name of God is what commands and creates everything. Nivra'u means is passive. Nif'al, the worlds are being created. It's not that God creates them. They are being created. Just like this level, in order for God, who is truly infinite. Now we're talking about the lowest aspect of God. the lowest aspect of which is above time. It creates time, it creates space, it creates existence, it creates the spiritual. That's this lower name of God. Creates the name. If the spiritual is incomprehensible to us, how much more so the creator of the spiritual is incomprehensible to us. And we're saying, yes, but all there is God. That's all there is. So why can't we see and feel? So the answer is God has this process by which he conceals himself. So God conceals himself. What comes as a result of all this concealment? What we call reality. But really the reality that we see is so tremendously dimmed down and watered down and concealed and veiled that this, what we call reality, is really just a little ray of the speech of God's kingship, whatever. Therefore, there has to be this tzimtzum v'hispashus. That's God's name. Yud shows all this big process of how God conceals himself in order to create the world. That's the name of Yud K Vav K. That's the lower name of God. Okay, lower name of God. Now, what is the higher name of God? We'll get to that in a minute. Excuse me. Something wrong with my computer here. It just goes slow. Oh no, something's wrong with me. Here we go. 1 minute. 1 minute. Let's make this here smaller. Oh. I made a big mistake. Over here. I tried to make it smaller in an unconventional way. There we go. Oh. There we go. Okay, so that's how God creates the world, is through this process of the lower name of God, Yud, and then Hey Vav Hey. Just coincidentally, I mean, this is the fact. The name of God means now. Now, how the last three letters are Hey Vav Hey. Hey Vav Hey means present. There's Haya, Hoveh, Yiyeh. Hoveh is present. Hey Vav Hey is Hoveh, present. And Yud means constant. So this is the constant, the ability of God to constantly create being. Okay, what does God create being from? From himself. Why don't we see God? Because God contracts and conceals himself. So that contraction, that concealment, it's as though the world is being created from nothing because we don't see God. Okay, now there's also the upper name of God. What's this? That's the lower name of God. Then there's also the upper name of God. So the lower name of God, that's the power of creation, that God creates everything. God creates all being. It's totally incomprehensible. It's above the spiritual. God creates it. In order to create it, he has to also have this process, which is called Yud. He makes his light small, and then Hey expands that little point, expands it. Then he draws it down. That's the 4 letters of God's name. Okay. Then there's also God's lower name, but there's also God's upper name, and it also has these 4 letters, which also represent the same 4 things: Yud, Tzimtzum, etc. Behu bechinas ratzon. This is what's called God's will. Ola b'machshava, God's thought. God's desire that he should make the lower name of God. Liota olamot, that's in order to create the worlds. So the lower name of God, that's God's power to create, to make creation, to create spiritual, to create the physical, to create this, to make a new type of reality, a created reality. That's the lower name of God. The upper name of God is that God desires to make this lower name, which by means of it there can be worlds. For instance, a person before a person brings some sort of a deed. Let's say he wants to paint a picture. Before he brings the picture from potential to actual, Haya davarahu, this thing was mitzuger b'machshava. It was in his thought. Eichu ma lasod, what he wants to do. This level also gamken, this first name of God. In other words, how the creator, before he brings things out, even to actual, before he hires the contractor and the builders and everything, the contractor and the architect and the builders and this, that's like the second name of God. That's already relevant to the building, to creating the world. But before he hires this, before you go and hire the contractor and the architect and the this and before that, you have the idea. I want a house. That's like the first name of God. God rose up in God's mind. I want a world. I want there to be Torah. I want there to be people. That's in his mind. There's no creation yet. There's no even preparation for creation. God knows that in order to do this, he has to make this lower name of God. In this level, there's also a Yud, Hey, and Vav Hey. God makes himself small, so to speak, not himself. His thought or whatever. Listen, we're talking about things that are completely incomprehensible, but the Rebbe is, what's the point of this? The point is, listen, what is God? Like I said, it's the most important thing that there can be. God is really real. If you don't think that God is how the Rebbe explains, then it's very, very easy to fall into the pitfall of idolatry. And you think that God is a person, you pray to a power, you pray to a level, you pray to a star, you pray to a queen, I'm sorry, an angel, right? A force, something other than God. God is, he's saying God is the creator, right? But he says there's even something greater than that God is the creator. That God is the creator, that's a lower aspect of God. That God has a plan for the creation. He's got a thought why he's creating everything. And this idea of this God's thought, there's also all these four letters. This is what's called Alma Discasia. This is what's called the concealed worlds. It's not seen and revealed like the lower name of God. The lower name of God that creates all the angels. So it says all the angels, for instance, in Isaiah and Ezekiel, they're all crying out to God. They're all praising God. They're all shouting out to God. In other words, they have some sort of an inkling that they're being enlivened, that God is creating them. They don't understand what it is. That's why they're screaming out, all the angels are burning up. But they understand that their existence is a created existence, that their very existence is being created all the time. So it ends up that God is not our competition. No, we can't do it. I can't do what I want. I got to do what God wants. God is creating me. God is my best friend. God is creating me. He's giving me free will to do whatever I want. But that's the lower aspect of God. What's the higher aspect of God? Why is God creating me? That is even more incomprehensible. So it says the lower aspect of God. I know I exist. Here I am. Did I get here from just from atoms or what it could be? But maybe I came here from a creator. Maybe the creator is really creating me. Maybe I'm not really real. I am real, but real reality is God that's creating me. And if I connect to that God that's creating me, then I become more real. That's only the lower aspect of God. But then there's also what's called the higher aspect of God, that this is totally beyond comprehension. And that if we say that there's God who creates the world, could be a thing like that. I mean, either we say the world just popped up on its own, and which could be, or we say that God is creating it, which also could be. So it's like 50-50, or maybe there's 90% that there is no God, or 99% that there's no God, and 1%. But there is a little tiny possibility that maybe there is God and he's creating everything. Could be. That's a little bit logical. But to say that God has a purpose, that why he creates this aspect of himself that can create the world, that's already too much. Right? So it says this lower aspect of God, which is called the creator aspect of God, that's called the revealed worlds. And the upper aspect of God, which is the aspect of God that decides it wants there to be a creator, that's what's called the concealed aspect of God. Totally concealed. It's beyond understanding. It's not in the category of understanding. The angels don't understand it. Lochin, therefore, that's the idea of the Torah. We'll see. Lochin, therefore, Omer Paro said, Me, who Hashem, Asher, Lo Amin, me, who Hashem. Moses came and said, I am a representative of Yud Ke Vav Ke. Paro said, who is this? I don't believe that there is such a name of Yud Ke Vav Ke, of above. The lower name of God, he could say, okay, I understand there's people that believe this. This is believable, right? Moses and the Jewish people, they believe that there's a creator. Paro could say, okay, a creator, okay. But that there's an upper name of God, that there's a reason, a purpose why God is creating everything. If God is infinite, how can he have a reason? But this doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. It also doesn't make any sense that he's creating the world, but the world is here. We can see the world. But to say that there's a reason for the world and that there's an idea why God even started, this makes really just, it's not that it makes no sense. It's not in the realm of sense at all. There's no necessity to say anything like this. God created the world. Part of the world is that we have a conscience in order to, how do you say, to succeed or to whatever, right? Freud and these guys have the whole thing, conscience all figured out. It's just the Oedipus complex, or it's Adler says it's society is putting pressures on you or whatever. But there's totally no indication that there is God making a reason for the world except for the Torah. That's the only thing we'll see. Okay. But Bavadai, certainly this name, Yud Ke Vav Ke, the lower name of God, Hamahava, that creates everything, Yodea. Paro certainly knew that there was a God that at least some people believe that there's a God that creates the world. Paro knew that there was such an opinion. What does it mean that God said, I don't know God? It means he did not know. There was no way that you could even postulate that there's a God that has a reason for creating the world. But it says when the Jews left Egypt, it says, Vayar Yisrael Yada Gadola, the Jewish people saw the hand, the big, the great hand of God, Asher saw that God made in Egypt. What does it mean? Asher saw that God made Havaya Deleil, the upper name of God, that he made by means of Mitzrayim, that he made by means of Egypt. And there's when God took the Jews out of Egypt, suddenly something strange is going on here. I mean, that's not in any physics book. This is not according to any laws of nature or occult or spiritual books or anything, that God himself gets involved in the world. Okay, stop here, that's enough. That God creates the world, okay. That God creates the laws of nature, okay, let's say, could be. But that God has a plan for the world and that he has certain things that are forbidden to do by God and that are permissible to do. That doesn't make any sense. Things in the world that work. There's this whole philosophy, Greek philosophy called Stoicism. Practical. To be practical. Be a practical person. Something like Spinoza and these people. Be practical. There could be God, right? Maybe there's a creator, could be, but there's no laws. There's no laws. Spinoza was a big expert at that, right? There's no laws. There's no God that cares. There's no this, right? There's a guy. Maybe there's a God that creates the world. Okay, there's a power of being, of creating. That's like the Hindus also believe something like that. Something like that. Spinoza and the Hindus believe basically the same thing. He didn't have all this hierarchy of gods and beliefs and everything. But what is God? This sort of amorphous, not caring power that a general power that creates everything, maybe, that's involved with the creation. Paro certainly knew about this. When God took the Jews out of Egypt, all of a sudden the Egyptians started to see, one second, maybe there's a plan over here. What's going on? The sea split, all these things. They could say, okay, maybe this is something natural. And in Israel also, they try to do this, right? I mean, maybe in the whole world. Try to explain the 10 plagues according to nature. And if not, so they made it up. There's no such thing as the 10 plagues. But if you do say that there was 10 plagues and that you can't explain it according to nature, then how did it happen? How did it happen? So you know how it happened? Let's change the subject. Let's talk about something else. That's what it says. In order to get out of Egypt, it says like a block of wood, the low sulik bein nahora, that fire doesn't go into it, is that you have to break it. Why did God smite Egypt with all these 10 plagues? In order to make Egypt, excuse me, in order to soften Egypt up, to break Egypt, so that they could start realizing that there's not just a creator of the world, that there's a purpose for the creation. That's why God favors the Jews, and the Jews are called his children, to show that there's a purpose to this plan that you can't see. Because bilti efshari, it is impossible to reach this level of havaya delela, the upper name of God, except by means of sur meira, turning from bad. Bechin is bittul v'tzimtzum. You have to contract yourself, lav, not negative before positive, night before day. So what's going on? We're talking about reality here. We're not talking about religion. We're not talking about that we're the ultimate reality and that if we do good, we go to heaven. But the whole thing is talking about our reality, right? Where am I going to go? What's going to be with me? We're talking about that there is a bigger reality, to look at this physical world from a bigger perspective, to put it into proper perspective. The lower perspective is that there's a creator. There's a creator. So, okay, good. There's a creator. Good. But a creator says he creates some people are good thieves. So God creates people to be thieves. Who made a thief a thief? God. God does everything. So a thief, God made him a thief. Who made criminals to be criminals? God. God does everything. God is the creator. Paro said, okay, I can believe in God. God is creating me. He's creating me to be Paro. He's creating you to be slaves. Now shut up and get out. Right? I'm the boss over here. God is creating me to be the boss, Paro said. Moses came in and said, no, you don't understand. There's a purpose behind this whole business. A purpose behind the whole business, and that God really exists. There's good and bad. You're bad. Stop being bad. Let us go. Paro said, get out of here. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. There's no such thing. You're wrecking the whole show. But you ever see the movie? There was the movie The Wizard of Oz. You ever see the movie The Wizard of Oz? I remember when I was a kid, I saw the movie. It was a pretty good movie, actually. But I mean, I must have seen it, I don't know, 50, 60 years ago. Anyway, there's this Wizard of Oz, and everybody's just, in awe of the Wizard of Oz. And then everybody's going to the Wizard of Oz. He gives wisdom, he gives everything. And finally, these people, they get there, and, the straw man wants a heart and whatever it is, he wants a brain, I guess, whatever it is. And finally, they realize, hey, maybe the Wizard of Oz, he's just, they go to this place and there's this fires thing. What's that blinds over there? There's this drape. They pull it across the drape, and there's this little guy sitting there, and he's talking to I am the Wizard of Oz. He just made himself look big. This is something like the same thing. God is creating the world, right? Judaism came and pulled the veil away and said, this aspect of God that's creating the world, that's not ultimate reality. God is creating the world for a purpose. That purpose, that's ultimate reality. So for a person to go out of his own ego, that's to break Egypt. Once you break Egypt, your own ego, you start to feel, I'm being created for a purpose. Because if you don't break your ego, so you think, I'm being created and God wants me to be a bad guy. He wants me to be Paro. It just increases our ego. That's something like that Yitzchak wanted to bless Esav. He thought that by means of doing this, it would make him holy. But Yaakov, Rivka realized that if you give a blessing to Esav, he'll just stay egotistical. The same thing. A person that knows that there's a creator. So he says, listen, God created me to be, a criminal, to be a sinner. That's what he created me, and that's what he wants. In fact, there's no such thing as me. If God is creating me, like Paro said, if God is creating me, so I'm the way it's supposed to be. If I'm the leader, so I'm the boss. The Jews are servants. That's why there's the upper name of God. That's what it says. It's impossible to reach this upper name of God, to realize that there's a purpose for creation in the world, unless you turn away from bad. You have to somehow or other do away with this contraction of the world. The world can be a big concealment. The world is wonderful. The world is great, only if we look at it from the proper way. If we look at it from the proper perspective. If not, then the world becomes a big obstacle. The lower name of God can become the biggest enemy for the upper name of God. In other words, according to the lower name of God, there's no Just the world is just being created. There's no purpose. The upper name of God is a purpose. So it says that the upper name of God, that's what it says before. Remember it said, this is my name. It says Yud, Hey, the first two letters of God's name with 365 prohibitions. That's the gematria. One second. Give me a second. One second. Yud, Hey, with oh, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. It said, God said, this is my name forever. This is my mention. And Moses, he said at the burning bush, if you take Yud, Hey, and you add it, that's the first two letters of this upper name of God. With the my name, it comes out to be the 365 prohibitions, the Torah. What's things that are forbidden? Who would dream that there's things that are forbidden in the world? But at the root of the latatana, that's the arousal from below. That's where we have to, first of all, turn from bad. And that's when a person, therefore, has to do the same thing that God does. He has to, first of all, turn from bad, contract yourself. If you think that you're God, and that's the way God made us feel, that we're Him. So if we want to realize the truth, so we have to do what God did. Number one, contract yourself. Don't think that you're the whole world. After that, hey, try to understand this fact. Then that makes the above, when what we do, that causes God to react to what we do. Then when we contract ourselves, then God contracts Himself so that He can reveal Himself in the world. But when we do good, that's turning from bad. When we do good, then there's more of a revelation also in this world. Hey, that's these pashtos. Okay, so not exactly like I said. When we contract ourselves and say, we say, I'm not going to reveal my own ego the way I want to. I'm contracting my ego. I'm turning away from bad. So God contracts, so to speak, His oneness so that it makes it able to come into the world. When we do good, then God reveals this oneness in the world. That's the letters Yud, Hey, the first two letters. Okay, what's this got to do with God, the Jewish people seeing God, and after that believing? It says when the Jewish people saw on the Kriyas Yam Suf, when they saw that God made the sea into the dry land, we said that the sea. What did we say in the last mimer? We learned the sea. That's the upper name of God. Here the Rebbe is explaining a little bit different. Here the sea is the upper name of God. That's what's called the concealed worlds. And when the Jewish people saw that the upper worlds were revealed in this world, Yabasha, that's the revealed world. But also when they saw that God could transform the upper worlds, the concealed worlds, to reveal, that God made the sea to be dry land, that suddenly the sea, all these concealed worlds, the concealed aspects of God, they suddenly became revealed. It says that when the sea split, it says that all the waters, all the upper worlds, everything that was concealed, like waters conceal what's in it, all the upper worlds split, and all the Jewish people saw God. They saw that the river, the sea, the concealed worlds, it became dry without any dampness whatsoever, total revelation. Like it says, V'yikavu amayim. It says that the waters, they like coagulated. But Tira Yabasha, and they saw the dry land. Then it says they believed in Yud-Kev. What does it mean, believed? Then they believed that there can be His galus revelation of the upper name of God. Shu b'chinas alma diskasya. Then suddenly, this level of godliness, which is incomprehensible, can only be, suddenly became comprehensible. Suddenly they saw the upper worlds became this physical world. That's what it means, Vayiru ha'amas Hashem. That's what it means the people saw. And then they believed in Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. First of all, they saw God, namely the lower name of God. The Jewish people went across the sea. They saw that the whole physical world is being created by God. Alma Diskali, the revealed world. Shuvah B'chinas Hasaga, they could understand. Then the Yira, they could see it. Sira, Yira, Yira bullshit. It says like fear, shame. Like for instance, a person that sees a king, right? You see a king, you're afraid. You're afraid. And then after they saw godliness, they could see godliness. The word yira is also the same letters as fear, but they saw God, and because they saw God, so they were immediately affected. And then afterwards, that's called the lower aspect of God. They saw that God is creating the world. They saw the world as a creation. And afterwards, Vayaminu B'Hashem, then afterwards they believed in God. This is the upper name of God, the Elah. This is the name of God from above. 1 second. Give me one moment over here. Oh, here we go. Just give me 1 second. Give me one moment. Yes. Okay. Good. Then they saw. Then they first of all they saw God. That's the lowest aspect of God. And then the upper aspect of God, which you cannot see. Then suddenly they realized that it's true, that there's a really purpose for the world. So the people, first of all, they saw that God controls nature. And then afterwards, that's the lower name of God. And then afterwards, Shehu B'chinas Hasaga, they could understand. There it's relevant seeing. And then afterwards, they believed in God. Believing in God, this is the upper aspect of God. La'ela, Alma Diskasia, that the hidden aspect of God that's hidden, they realize there must be a higher aspect of God that she'enu nira, that's not seen and understandable. But lo shayach, and it cannot be seen. You can't see it anymore. You can't kiyim emuna, only faith. Okay, this is a very basic thing in life also. Usually people who claim to be atheists, what they're trying to say is that their faith is a mistake. Faith is how do you say, a disease, to believe in God is the disease. Freud famously said this. So when a person believes in God, it's a disease, it's a sickness. Okay, maybe faith in business, maybe faith in. If you think about it for one moment, it doesn't really make any sense. If you think about it, because if people didn't have faith in something, they wouldn't move. How do you know the world still exists? How do you know that things are, that's what the newspapers and the news, they try to shake our faith in a positive world. There's corona, there's the what is it, the global warming, there's too many people in the world. But a normal person has a positive look in the world. That's called faith. I believe that, my house still exists. I believe that I still have a job. I believe that you don't know it 100%. You don't know it. That's called emunah. That's called simple faith, right? But emunah, faith, is a good thing. It's a positive thing. That's, in a way, the essence of life. It causes you to move from where you are into the unknown. And basically, everything is unknown to us. Right? How do you know that what you saw yesterday is going to be? That's just the way it's been. You get used to it, but really, faith is there. Maybe not, right? That's what people want to say. Maybe not. Maybe you can't sit anymore. The corona, you can't sit. You used to be able to sit down, but you can't sit down anymore. Maybe the world is going to blow up any moment, right? The sky is falling. Maybe. So if faith is a good thing, but faith can be developed. Faith can be developed, and it can perceive things that your normal senses can't perceive. Faith itself becomes a sense, one of your senses. It says, ideally, the reason that God put this thing of faith inside of us is so that we should be able to connect to that which is incomprehensible, totally above understanding. That we're being created, that's already, pushing it. But could be. But to say that there's a reason for the creation, that we have to believe. And that God cares about us, that's the thing we have to believe. And that's what Judaism comes to. So, and that's what the Jewish people saw when they went over Yam Suf, and that's what we're going to continue learning about tomorrow. Excuse me.